I joined Big Switch because I truly see that networking is at a turning point. If you look at what's unfolded over the course of the last 2 to 3 years in particular, you got the advent of cloud and virtualization really driving change. You have now the bare metal switch market really starting to get adoption. You do so in large part because you have software-defined networking coming on the scene, where you've got the separation of hardware and software as far as how people are deploying. And lastly, and arguably most importantly, you have big companies like Facebook and Google that are really trying to challenge the status quo. And they're starting to build networks the way they want to build them using bare metal switches and software-defined networking. So I view it that this is really just the beginning as far as where things can go with SDN. Step one was looking at where we want to play. And we made the decision that we are going to focus on the data center. So step one is the market for us is data center. The second piece is really looking at the key tenets as far as how we'll address that market. Number one, it's about building a modern network operating system. And so as opposed to worrying about legacy infrastructure, a million lines of code, it's in 2013, 14, how would you build an optimal network? And so that's how we're building our infrastructure. So using open standards, very simple, easy to use, modern style operating environment. The second thing is we focus on making the network operations folks heroes. And so we want to simplify how they operate the network. We'd like to have it such that they're not coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so really having it such that we leverage OpenStack as an example. So we have a plugin that works with OpenStack and really trying to get it such that we simplify how a network operator runs their network. And then the other components are we focus on choice. So we let customers decide how they want to deploy the technology, what sort of software licenses they would have, what sort of hardware they want to put it on, since we separate hardware and software. And we do so at a very, very aggressive cost, typically well over 50% lower than the incumbents in the market today. It's a really important ecosystem for us to work through. So I'll look at it in terms of what I have as southbound partners, where it's companies like Broadcom, companies like Dell, where we're working on the physical devices and how we best interoperate and work with one another. So whether it's the ODM players on the white box or on the bare metal side, or silicon like Broadcom, companies like Mellanox, and also looking at how we actually optimize for that. We then also have northbound. And northbound are really all the other companies that we would interact with on the other side. So a lot of the security vendors. So you'll hear some of this at RSA, where we'll be there and we'll be discussing our big tap monitoring fabric and how we work well with the security vendors, as an example. And so it's important for us in the data center to make sure that we're optimized not only for the physical side, but also for the ecosystem of partners that require us to be successful. I believe that SDN is in its infancy. And so if you spend time looking at research reports and talking to customers, a lot of customers on Wall Street, a lot of the LTE vendors, so a lot of the operators are now doing trials. So there's not broad adoption as of yet, but I think we're on the cusp of something significant. If you look at the reports that Infinetics and others have written at this point, it's to the tune of being tens of millions of dollars in 2013, growing to about 3 to 4 billion over the course of the next 3 to 4 years. And so there's a massive shift that's about to happen relative to the data center specifically, and that's what we're focusing on. The reason why there's a lot of buzz and a lot of hype about open is because as we move to this next chapter of networking, being open is incredibly important. We focus a great deal in terms of the products we build in our modern architecture, focusing on open protocols and open standards, but also making sure that we're part of the community that's being built. A great example is the OCP event that happened recently. Even the likes of Mark Zuckerberg, he was involved with some of the dynamics and some of the presentations that were there. And at Big Switch, we're investing in these communities as well. We donated something at OCP called ONL, which is Open Networking Linux. And that's something where we really believe that people can start to standardize on a specific element that sits on every single white box that gets shipped. And so if everybody can standardize, that only advances where we can go in terms of open development, open strategies in the market. And so open is going to play a very critical part of this next chapter, in my opinion. I'd agree that most of the action is indeed on the software side, and that's in large part because of the standardization that's occurred in the industry really over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. Broadcom has really surfaced as the dominant player. In fact, if you look at many of the devices that ship in 10 gig switches today, a lot of them are Trident 2, which is a standard platform that Broadcom has. And because of that broad adoption, a lot of the competitive differentiation really has to happen in software. And so that's why you see a lot, not only at Big Switch, but a lot of the other vendors, including the incumbents, really emphasizing and stressing the advantages of software.